The Committee on Agricultural Policy will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman Roan,
Present.
Vice Chair Francis, Representatives Weber, Berger, Busick, Collins, Dinkins, Gregory, Hayden, Haley, Knight, McCreary, Rogers, Sharp, Thompson, Van Scoik, Young.
A quorum being present, we'll now hold a hearing on House Bill 2402, sponsored by Representative Hollis. Representative Hollis, please proceed when you're ready. But while you're getting ready, I'm going to kind of poll the witness pool to see how many people we're going to have a witness, so I can set up so many minutes per witness, so everybody will have at least a say in what they came up here to do. How many people are just going to be a witness? I don't care if it's for, against, or in information purposes only. 8, 9, 10. Okay. It's very good. Representative Hollis, go ahead and start. When you're ready, sir.
Chairman Roan, members of the committee, thank you today for hearing this bill. House Bill 2402 has been dubbed the Right to Repair Bill. It's the same bill that we had last year that passed out of this committee. I believe it was 10-5, which was House Bill 975. A little bit about myself. I am from Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Grew up on a farm. We had cattle, logging, things along those lines. Later went into law enforcement, served there for 30 years. The last 7 years I was there, I was in support services. One of those positions that I had in support services is that I oversaw a fleet. I had a mechanic, 1.5, actually a mechanic and a part-time that worked on 70 to 80 vehicles, which was one of the things that I made sure we kept running for our fleet and our police officers working the streets. That's when I kind of got to learning about all this high-tech technology that comes with automotives and things along those lines, became aware of what our guys' capabilities were, what they could do, what could be done at the dealership, which kind of transferred over to, I still farm, I still do hay, we have cattle on our farms, I have equipment myself, and I had an issue pop up here that I think I shared last year. I have a John Deere 5075M, has this technology on there, and I had a draft control linkage go bad, which needs to be still replaced, which I'm getting ready to do. But I learned at that time that I could not do that for a simple reason that I did not have the payload files or the codes, what do you want to call it, it's going to be called different things, to be able to make that part function with my tractor. So I know just 6 months ago I called them to see if that equipment was available for me. It still was not. I think I even asked one of the gentle ladies here that was with John Deere if I could still get that equipment, and unless something's changed shortly, they told me still no. And one of the things that I've learned on my tractor is I can do probably 90% of my repairs, that's true. But with all this advent of technology, especially on the agricultural, forestry, and I guess construction side, there's certain things that we as owners still cannot do if we purchase that equipment. So basically what House Bill 2402 does is it provides the owners of products purchased or used in Missouri and independent repair providers shall have the right to access the same diagnostic and repair information that manufacturers supply to authorized repair service provider. So someone that's working in one of the dealerships, their mechanic, they have certain things that they can do inside that shop that will allow them to make these repairs that is not available to your non-OEM providers. So that might be a gentleman that maybe he worked at John Deere for 20 years, decided to retire, wanted to go out and start doing service calls, make his own business, that he would not now have access to that because he's no longer under that scope of service and be able to get those updates and equipment. Me as an owner, if I wanted to go out and buy this, which is available on the automotive side, I could pay a subscription, be able to buy this equipment. If I wanted to sync, which one of the things, I think the last thing I had an issue with is we had a new car where it just went out of warranty because we put so many miles on them, and we had a motor window go out. Now, I thought you just go in there and put that motor window in, plug it in, and boom, it'll work. It would not. We had to have that payload file downloaded into the vehicle so that it would actually recognize, or it had to recognize that new part so that it would tie in with the computer of the car and then be able to work. And, you know, the mechanic I had there at the shop was able to do that. If you transferred that over to the, tractor side, you would not be able to do that with some of the things that they have available out there. And I know that the providers of all this equipment is trying to move forward and make these things get better, but I don't think that we're there right now, and that is the preface of this bill here. Some of the things that I wanted to point out in this area is we tried to add some things from last year in here that I think would give even more protection, I guess, to our OEM producers here, Case IH, John Deere, Caterpillar, all the others that are out there, is that this bill does not require them to release trade secrets. That's protected under federal law. And this also includes patent protection. If there's patents out there, it does not require them to expose those. Anything that comes up with parts that they are selling or now providing to their inside, that if they provide this to outside vendors, that it has to be at a fair and reasonable price. We're not trying to get them to give it away free or anything along those lines. Other things that I've noticed too when I introduced this bill last year is I received a lot of calls. I had a guy that wanted to include his airplane in this right to repair because he uses it for agricultural spraying. He's got 5 airplanes in the state of Missouri. One of them went down. He's got a full-time mechanic at the airport where he works that works on them, and a code went off on that one there that required a service provider to come in. Took 2 weeks for that guy to get there, and he's in the middle of trying to get stuff sprayed, and he could not get that plane running until they actually sent somebody in. One of the things we have to remember in Missouri is that agriculture is one of our number one commodities we have here. During planting season and during harvest season, that is the busiest time of the year for this industry we have in the state of Missouri. I think by expanding this technology to your non-OEM repair shops and to even owners, that they could probably have the ability to get this stuff fixed faster, especially on things that they have the ability to do, and keep that equipment running so that we can make sure that agricultural stays number one in Missouri. There's some other things that I'll probably touch on here in a little bit. I know that you're going to hear some of the concerns that's going to be listed by the other side on this. I don't know that I'll have a follow-up at the end on this, and I'm hoping that some of the witnesses that I have testifying today will be able to expand upon that, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have now.
Any questions of this Representative Hollis? Yes, Representative Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To inquire.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Representative.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for coming here and presenting. I had just a really quick question. It's kind of just want to clarify. So you had edits since last session on this
Yes.
bill, and so the edits is you do not require trade secrets and protection of the patents, and then the fair and reasonable price. Were those kind of the edits that you made?
Yeah, I think the fair and reasonable price we'd left in there because we're not wanting to, obviously I want all these equipment manufacturers to be profitable. That is one of the things because you want them to be able to survive. If a company can't make money, obviously they're not going to survive in this. But the big question I always had on this is if I buy something, whether it be this phone I'm carrying or whether it's a tractor, do I really own it if I don't have the ability to get this equipment to work on it? If it's a leased thing, obviously that's owned by somebody else if they're saying that's proprietary. The only thing that we would require on disclosure that there may be a little bit of a question on is if a company says, well, this is all proprietary when it comes to certain repairs. The only thing that we are requiring is that anything that a tech has in the John Deere dealership, Case IH dealership, or any of the other dealerships, and I'm not trying to just pick on one or the other, is that if that mechanic has it available to them, that it should be available to the open market also.
All right. Thank you so much.
Representative, go right ahead.
To inquire, please.
Go ahead.
You know, Representative Hobush, you kind of said that the busiest times of the year is during the spring when we're planting and harvesting in the fall. I just wonder if parts are at fair and reasonable prices. I don't know who will determine that, but I can see dealers maybe not stocking as many parts if they can't charge the price they want to for parts, and downtime is so crucial. You know, my family farms, and if they're down very long, more than 5 hours, they're irate. I can imagine being down 2 or 3 hours. Think that will have an effect on this?
Yeah, could it? Yes. Will it? I don't know. It depends on what availability is. I'm not going. I had a guy call me on the way up yesterday because he'd read an article in the paper that this bill was coming up, and he'd went to one of the dealerships. I'm not going to call any names out here to buy a part for one of these planters. There it was an unusual bolt. He got ready to buy it, and they said, "Well, it'll be $12.99, $13." And then the guy says, "But if you go over to AutoZone, you can get it for $1.50." So, you know, I mean, there's always going to be markups on parts and stuff like that. But cross-referencing those numbers so that parts are available, because a lot of these things, even for the OEMs, they're available because they can be used across the whole spectrum there of different equipment. And having those parts cross-referenced, I was just talking to one of the gentlemen here. He says they're doing that now, which is a wonderful thing, to make sure that we can keep that equipment running. I'm hoping it'll work hand in hand is what I'm hoping, Representative Berger.
And also, I managed the International Harvester dealership in my previous life for 6 years. You have to make money somewhere.
Yep.
Will this drive the prices of equipment up because they'll have to make a profit somewhere if they're not selling their parts and service? Because when we sold equipment, we sold whole goods. The margin was very close because of competitiveness of either John Deere or our own international dealerships within the area. Will this drive the price of equipment up?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Could it? Yes. I've always believed in the open market system. If there's more people doing it, it drives the price down for everyone. That's why I think and I'm not saying this is a monopoly, I've heard it called that, where if the manufacturer is the only one that can work on certain things and they're the only ones you can call, I don't consider that to be free market. But I'm hoping that the best will see a way through this and they'll rise to the top and be successful.
Thank you.
Representative Slack? Go right ahead.
Thank you, Representative Hovis. My question goes along with Representative Berger's question. How do you define what is fair and reasonable, and who makes that determination?
Well, again, it's always give and take. The manufacturer is going to actually have a price that they put on whatever they sell. That's how they make money. And when we say fair and reasonable, that's going to be whatever the market would determine through them. So if they say this is worth $1 million, but someone disagrees, obviously they could probably sue them over that if it's cost them, $10 to make it in another country or make it here. So when we say fair and reasonable, it should be based on whatever the normal profit margin should be that most people try to look at. And everybody has a different definition of that. So I don't know that I could answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Representative Hollis? Representative Gregory, go right ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Representative. So the bill came up last year, and I feel like I have great dealer support where I'm at. I feel like I'm very blessed with that great dealer support, and I've got a good relationship with them. And so when I talk about this, and I'm like, hey, I'm being told that, you can't purchase everything you need to diagnose and fix problems. And he said, well, actually, you can. You
Can or can't?
You can.
Okay.
You can purchase the diagnostics software to plug in and read a code. I don't want to mess with that because right now I just take a picture of my screen and I send it to my service manager and he says, well, here's your problem. It's A, B, C, or D. And then he knows me fairly well. And I said, knowing my mechanical capabilities, Billy, do you think I can fix this problem? And sometimes he says, you should be able to. And then other times he says, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's a knock on me or if he just, wants to have the tractor in there. But
I think we're riding the same horse on this, okay?
I mean, I guess that's my main question. If we already have access to the computers and the software to be able to pull codes and to be able to get access to manuals and advisors that, tell you to proceed with, try this. If this doesn't, on my Ford pickup truck, I had an issue where it said, start here, replace this. If that doesn't fix it, start here, replace this. Finally, the number 3 option was the most expensive one because they'd fix those 3 things, and that either one of those would take care of the issue. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's my main question. If we can already get the software and the computers and the scanning equipment to check codes and get the repair protocol, where are we at on this?
Yeah, so good points that you make, but you still can't get everything that a normal repair gentleman would have working at one of those dealerships there. There's a guy that's going to follow me here that's going to talk about that, who has a much more experience than what I've got, and probably those questions could be also asked of John Deere. What is currently available? I think if you have those questions, you should probably ask, because I was going to say that 95% of repairs can be done by you or I. Let's talk about the parts that cannot be done by us, the repairs that can't be done. And then let's talk about those, because this is new technology in the agricultural, construction, forestry side. It's came on in the last 10 to 15 years. And I'm going to try to equate it to what we did on the automotive side. 2012, Massachusetts passed a bill for right to repair for automotive. The same issue was going on with the manufacturers at that time. It passed. There was tons of lawsuits. It withheld judicial scrutiny. And then that brought all the manufacturers to the table on a national MOU. Now, some of the others can probably talk about that, but that then allowed some of this equipment that I saw work in the shop that I had people working in on syncing something. It's pretty simple. You plug it in. They've made it industry-wide now. Ford, Chevy, Dodge, whoever. There's an OBD2 plug-in, and I don't know if that's the current one right now. I think there's OBD1, OBD2. It plugs into the same port. I don't know that they have that same thing on any of these tractors. It probably takes a different hookup in all of them. They made that all consistent on the automotive side. And truly, this bill is only trying to make the same thing on the agricultural side that was already on the automotive side. And I hope that they'll be able to answer those other questions on some of the stuff that can be done and what can't be done.
I want to follow up with that because I do know there's some instances where things need to be calibrated, and there's new software that comes in, and I think this is another argument for rural broadband coming in and being more important, because we had like a speed control cable on our 6130R that came unplugged, and my dad got phone call after phone call after phone call from the dealership saying, "Hey, we can tell that something's wrong with your speed control on your front left wheel." And he goes, "Don't worry about it. If I don't need it, I'm not going to fix it." But that was something they could see through the online deal. I don't know if it went into his phone or we just had some coverage where we were at, but I feel like some solutions are coming to be able to more easily push the software over the air.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. A lot of farmers, it's a decision they make. When we had the older equipment, if it started overheating and I had one round left to do of baling hay, I might try to force it through, even though I might have even damaged my equipment, or if the rain was coming. I talked to a farmer the other day that was trying to get 40 acres of beans out last year. We were talking about this bill because he'd heard about it last year, and he had a sensor that put his tractor, or actually his combine, into slowdown mode. And he had to limp it out of the field because he couldn't finish the beans. Supposed to rain the next day. Luckily, he called the John Deere people, and they said, "Well, we're backlogged. Everybody's got problems right now," and it was going to be like a week and a half before they get somebody out. Unfortunate, because it just wasn't enough guys out there to fix that stuff. Luckily for him, his neighbor who had just finished up come over and helped him finish up the beans that he was doing there. And that's why I think if we broaden that base of repair people out there, even if it's a mechanic that used to work at one of the dealerships, decides to go out on his own. I see that a lot down in my area. People will work at Chevy or GM or wherever, and they'll go out and start their own repair shop because they've got the knowledge, the expertise, could probably service that piece of equipment just as good as someone currently working there. And I would even argue that someone that's been there 20 years that's worked with all this stuff would be better than a new guy coming in at one of those OEM places. So that's just things that I think would broaden the market and make our situation better.
Representative McCoy, go ahead.
Good morning, Representative. Thank
Morning.
you for being here. So you're singing my tune a little bit. My dad is a retired mechanic from a Chevy dealership and then went out on his own after. And my husband, of course, you've heard the escapades of being married to a mechanical engineer. So, one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit more is what Representative Gregory was talking about, which is this idea that, you can do 75% of your own or whatever. And, if you just, when I just think about the basics, and I like your bill, but I wish we could actually have it apply to phones and other things as well. Because, to me, we all of us work really hard for our money, and we actually, when you buy something, you own it. So if you can only fix 75% of it or even 95%, I feel like then you're still actually don't own it. So can you talk that through with me a little bit?
Yeah, so that's an argument right now. I know that you and I, the question that you posed there, talking about this, I think even last year, was how do we, I know we maybe want to include other things in this, and I brought up the airplane thing. The guy wanted to be in there. He goes, "I'm agriculture." He goes, "Include my plane in here because I need to get this technology so that he can keep his stuff flying and not have to wait 2 weeks for the repair guy to come in." But it's the same thing with phones, even replacing a battery. Some manufacturers would not allow you to do that, which could have probably extended that device for maybe 3 or 4 more years. You don't have to throw it away, go buy a new one. And
and they end up in the landfill.
Yeah. that's true. Those are things that we have to think about.
Yeah, at least
So-
tractors don't hopefully end up in a landfill when they become
No,
obsolete.
I don't, but, when we talk about support services and stuff like that, how long will someone support stuff? I think the manufacturers back here will support it for as long as they can, but I have a John Deere 4020 that we still use that works perfectly. We've overhauled it. I think we're on the third time now, and I think there's another representative here who's probably got more of 4020s than what I got. But, we found aftermarket parts that are being made and provided that we can, put on there that actually improved one of the minor problems we had in that particular tractor with some hydraulic stuff in the rear end. So I think that making this stuff available and using the expertise that we've got coming up with our young kids that are going to school and learning all this tech stuff. My son, he's looking at going into diesel repair or automotive tech. My expectation is if I pay this money to get him to go to school and this equipment's available, he's going to be fixing my tractor, so I don't have to, probably ship it off and pay that extra pence of transferring it or call-outs and stuff. But if it's above my pay grade, we won't do it. And if it is, I'll do it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's sometimes lost in this discussion is that, people know what their capacity is. Right. And, if it's something that you've paid money for, you're certainly not going to experiment on it if it's above your capability. So the other thing I just wanted to mention is I am envious of Representative Gregory having a good relationship with a dealer and having someone close by, but a lot of us are on pieces of property with equipment where there's nobody for hundreds of miles. And so I want to be sensitive to that as well as it relates to agriculture. We still represent a lot of folks that are just not serviced and not in an area where they have easy access.
Yeah, Representative Gregory brought up a great point on broadband. Where I live and where we work at, we do not have that available. This newer technology can actually transmit across broadband waves and diagnose the issues that may pop up and send it to the dealer. But where we've got our stuff at, it wouldn't make any difference because I can't get a cell phone call in or out. There's no bars there, so that wouldn't be able to be usable in my area until we get that fixed in the state, which we probably need to get that done too.
We're in the same boat. Thank you for the inquiry.
Thank you.
Representative Hannon, go ahead.
Mission to inquire. Getting back to what is fair and reasonable price. Let's say you got a piece of equipment you use to fix something, and if you're a dealer, you might use that 100 times a year, or maybe 300, and yet in the position as a farmer would be, they might use it once. So what's fair and reasonable? The price that you use it once when you have it spread your costs over once, or 100 times? Because that gets to be, how do you make that fair and reasonable? Because to them, fair and reasonable per use would be prohibitive to the farmer. So I'm a little hung up on that. How do you make it reasonable when they're using it a lot more, where you're only using it maybe once or twice?
So what I'll end up doing is I'll make the decision. We can look at it a couple different ways, but now I'll give you an automotive example on that too. But let's just say that I want to go buy this particular tool, whether it be John Deere Advisor with some enhanced functionality in there, and they tell me that that's going to be, whatever that price is. I don't know if it's $8,000, $5,000, $4,000. I don't know. Then I'm going to have to make a determination that when I buy that, will I be able to use that piece of equipment all the way through the life of that vehicle, and what are the updates going to cost me? And is that a recurring cost of $4,000 each year? I'm just throwing numbers out here. It could be $20. I don't know. They can probably discuss that here in a minute. I'll make that decision as an owner, but I have that right to make that decision because it'll be available to me. On the automotive side, one of the things they've done with the equipment that we purchased there for the shop, or say the city purchased, is that they had one machine they could buy, and it would cover all the models. So you'd be able to plug in and cover John Deere, or not John Deere, but Chevy, GM, Dodge, Ford, whatever. And we had to update that every year because there would be payload files, and they'd put in there patches for problems they would find that was wrong with the computer, the technology in particular vehicles. And we didn't update that every year. We updated it every other year, paid a subscription every other year to get the updates because we found out we didn't need to do it every year. We're saving money for the city. And if I'm trying to remember, I was going to call the gentleman this morning and ran out of time. I was going to ask him what that current subscription price is on the automotive side, which would kind of put it in perspective of what we pay for one time for that machine there that we have that covers all those models. Whereas if you were doing it on the agricultural side, I'd have to go buy Case IH's system, I'd have to buy John Deere's system, I'd have to buy Kubota's system if they have one, and Caterpillar, same thing. I don't think they're going to cross-reference like we've been able to do on the automotive side.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Representative Hollis? If not, it looks like we're going to have about 9 to 10 minutes per witness, so we'll start with, we'll stagger it. They'll go in support of, opposition to, and then at the very end, we will have for information purposes only. So, Representative, we'll go ahead and start.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and committee, thank you for your time.
I will ask everyone to please fill out a witness form. Make sure a witness form is filled out, and we'll start with someone that is in support of. Nine minutes.
Good morning. My name is Jared Wilson, and I'm a fifth-generation farmer from Bates County, Missouri. I have an American FFA degree, a Bachelor of Science in Agribusiness with a minor in agronomy from Kansas State University, and I'm an alumnus of the Alpha Zeta chapter of the Alpha Gamma Rho Agricultural Fraternity. It's a great inconvenience for my farm for me to be here today. I see many office workers who represent equipment dealerships here, though. How fortunate you are to take off and lobby while your customers who don't have that luxury are hard at work today. Make no mistake, my voice reflects the sentiments of many who are hard at work as we speak. I grow just under 4,000 acres of corn and soybeans scattered across 2 Missouri counties. I personally planted that many last spring and summer, and last fall, I sat on a John Deere combine and harvested every single acre. In addition to that, I run a 250 head commercial cow-calf operation. Driving 100 or 200 miles for parts during planting season is not uncommon if by some miracle we can diagnose the problem we're having with the machine. On May 13th last spring, I got up and visited my father in the nursing home. He had been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in 2017. It was only his 8th day there, but we knew he was close to passing. That afternoon, surrounded by his family, he slipped from the surly bonds of earth. My little sister called to tell me, because I was operating 40 tons of John Deere equipment trying to get my corn in before the coming rain. In my family, we work through everything when we need to be in the field. We don't have time for anything else. If I hadn't had so many delays getting my equipment repaired by my awful local dealership last spring, maybe I would have been there to watch my indomitable father die at the tender age of 63. Perhaps other producers wouldn't have missed their children's sporting events or the other things in life we relish being at when we're in the field. Why have we given the equipment manufacturers the right to deny us that? I hope I have properly conveyed that this issue transcends mere profit. All the liability of operating my equipment rests with me. Dealerships have extensive language in their sales agreements to release them of all imaginable liability. They know this, and I imagine will continue to be dishonest about liability being an issue for them here today. I don't want to modify my machine, but if I did, it's none of their business or risk. They should review their own sales contracts and the end-user license agreements of the software in these machines. My primary experience is with my local John Deere dealership, Heritage Tractor, although I have Case, AGCO, CAT, New Holland, and many other brands on my farm. Heritage had 5 stores in 2009 and today operates 22. If the invisible hand referenced by Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations that we have based our free market economy around were functioning properly, they would have expanded because they're an excellent dealership with more efficiency, better customer service, and perhaps lower prices than their competitors. That isn't what happened here. John Deere Corporate forced all the smaller dealerships to either sell out or have their Deere franchise revoked. Now there isn't another Deere dealership within 80 miles of me owned by a different company. In 2019, I took delivery of a 60-foot planter I purchased new from Heritage. They didn't assemble it correctly before they brought it to my farm, and it took 2 days during planting season with myself and a John Deere master technician to get it working. Since the liquid fertilizer system wasn't plumbed properly, both he and I had to handle the dangerous pesticide bifenthrin. 4 other farmers in my area had similar problems with planters they took delivery of from the same dealership that year. While I dealt with this, my fertilizer spreader sat in their shop full of corrosive fertilizer on it for 28 days during peak season in April without getting fixed. I mailed the owner and CEO Ken Wagner a 6-page letter detailing my numerous issues with his company after those 2 events. I know he read it because the store manager told me he had. That coward never responded to me. There is no accountability with these people, and there is no accountability in a free market without some regulation that creates a fair playing field. I've had countless botched repairs. They know we have no other choice, and so they don't care about retaining our business. I can't just switch brands, and it wouldn't matter because the industry is an oligopoly, and all manufacturers refuse to provide the necessary diagnostic tools to the producer, despite the absurd claims they've made that I can already repair 98% of my equipment. Anyone making that claim hasn't grown 1,000 acres of anything. Equipment manufacturers are offering a software suite that has little of the functionality needed to actually diagnose and repair problems on these machines. I know because I actually leased John Deere Customer Service Advisor in 2019 for the ridiculous amount of $4,000 for 1 year. I'm told now that it's $8,000. I was told I was the second customer in the state to receive it after the Missouri Department of Transportation. It took me 3 months of emailing the dealership to get them to provide it. And with its limited functionality, it wasn't even worth leasing again. I don't want access to delete my emissions or turn my engine horsepower up. I can already do that through third parties. I have had many colleagues that have deleted the emissions equipment on their machines because they've waited days or weeks for John Deere dealerships to get them running during critical parts of the year. I had 2 separate issues last year with my emissions that resulted in weeks of downtime during planting season because of my dealership's lack of technicians and their utter incompetence. Please give me the tools to keep my machines within compliance of federal law, or I too will be forced to break it and delete my emissions equipment. Right now, John Deere is the only organization that can diagnose and repair emissions issues I have, period. To my knowledge, the same is true of all large equipment manufacturers. None of that software is made available in any way to customers. I've tried to buy it. President Harry Truman had a placard on his desk that said, "The buck stops here." What many people don't know is that on the back of that glass-painted sign, the side that faced him said, "I'm from Missouri." This legislation is going to get passed in some state house. A class action will eventually succeed. They're breaking antitrust laws for their egregious profiteering with no regard for their long-standing customers. I would be proud of my state for acknowledging the importance of the individual agriculturalist over the consolidated industrial interests. We need it now more than ever as a result of COVID-related supply chain delays and labor delays as a result of John Deere not wanting to distribute more of the $6.7 billion in profit it made last year to its workers. I face parts shortages, and my life is harder because apparently only $5 or $6 billion in profit wasn't enough for them. So they use their customers' needs as a bargaining chip in their labor negotiations. Thank you for this hearing and the opportunity to protect Missouri citizens from out-of-state corporate interests. I'd be happy to address any of your questions.
Any questions of this witness? Representative Webb?
Thank you. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for coming in here very early this morning and testifying. I'm so sorry to hear about your father. So a few quick questions I have. So what exactly are you not satisfied? Why are you not satisfied with your service provider right now, or what are they kind of doing to, to delay and some of the frustrations that you're currently having?
There's not enough service technicians, particularly for the busiest times of the year in spring and fall when we're planting and harvesting. What that means is that we're just a queue for these companies to have us weeks out to get repaired because we have no other choice. They're going to get paid for the repair, whether we lose revenue getting our crop in or taking it out or not. And to address Mr. Berger's point a little bit on the parts inventory, as a result of this consolidation, increasingly, I'm having to overnight parts from the large distribution warehouse John Deere has in Milan, Iowa, instead of dealerships stocking the inventory, because I'm not motivated to go to a different dealership that might, stock more inventory to keep my business. So they're externalizing their costs to increase the inventory that's available to us, and as such, we're dealing with those delays.
And exactly how far away is your service provider right now?
My existing dealership is pretty close. It's about 10 to 15 miles away, depending on where I'm farming at. But again, Heritage owns all the dealerships within 80 miles of my operation, so it's the same corporation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of this witness? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Please make sure you fill out a form. And a witness in opposition to.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Eric Wareham, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Western Equipment Dealers Association. I represent all brands of equipment dealers in the state of Missouri. We have 147 locations, and just to be clear, the dealerships are separate from the manufacturers. So they are their own, they're not company stores. I represent small businesses here located in Missouri, not very large entities. So I was here last year, and we talked about a lot of things. I focused my comments on sort of the legal arguments last year. And, you know, some of the questions we had from Representative McCreary and others were really pointed about what our industry actually does. What's the data look like? And, you know, I talked about our industry commitment that we made voluntarily to make parts, tools, and diagnostics documentation available directly to owners and independent repair shops. And so we had some questions about that. And so this year, or I should say at the end of last year, we conducted a survey through a third party to find out the answers to some of those questions. And what you have here on this handout before you are some of the results of that survey. And I'd just like to go over those because I think it paints the picture, you know, besides one customer's experience, what the overall industry looks like. What are we actually doing? What's available? And I think the top line number really points this out. You know, when we started this legislation 5 years ago, and it has yet to pass in any state after being introduced in almost every single one over 5 years. And that's because as we look into this and as you guys see, you peel the layers back, and this is a really complex issue. And I'll just preface my statement by saying that if you have any questions, we've made the offer available. We actually held a dealer demonstration for Representative Hovis and others a couple years ago at Heritage Tractor here in their Jeff City location. And we are happy to do that for any member. If you have questions about any of this, come see for yourself. Come down to the dealership and we'll walk you through it. And we're an open book. But as far as the industry goes, what does it look like? That top line number, that 56%, that represents the percentage of parts that are sold out the door by average dealership. And so what that really gets to the heart of here is, do we have a monopoly on repair, or are we preventing farmers or independent repair shops from performing repairs? Well, if you're selling the majority of your parts out the door, it can't really be, and that are not installed by the dealership, you can't really allege that there's a monopoly on repair. We also had questions last year from about who are we selling to? Our independent repair shops and that. We've heard about that. Do we want to support them? Well, sure. And what you see is that the average dealer has 2 independent repair shops in their top 10 parts customer list. And they sell to 9 of them on average. The average location sells to 9 independent repair shops. And so what you see is, you know, with this $1 million in parts inventory, that's the average that a dealership stocks in parts inventory. At all of our 147 locations in Missouri. The average is $1 million. So what you actually have in this model here that we have in our industry, and the business model for independent repair shops, is they don't stock $1 million in parts inventory. They actually piggyback on the dealership. They go to them and buy their parts. And clearly they're installing them. In fact, the majority is. So, you know, we talk about unintended consequences in legislation. I know you guys hear that all the time. It's a boogeyman nobody can talk about. Here's a very clear one for this issue. If you make parts available at dealer net cost, which there were a lot of questions about fair and reasonable, what does that mean? In the bill, when you look at Section 5, there's 3 factors that define what fair and reasonable is. The very first factor is, what is dealer net cost? So that means the first factor is, what is the dealer getting it from the manufacturer without markup? So basically you're saying the number one factor in fair and reasonable is the dealer not being able to make a profit on parts. If you do that and you disincentivize a dealer stocking parts, who are you going to hurt ultimately? You're going to hurt the farmer for one, and you're going to hurt the independent repair shops because they're not going to stock $1 million in parts inventory. And if they have to order it directly from the manufacturer, how long is their business model going to last if they have to wait and a farmer comes to them and says, hey, I can do that repair, but I got to order the part. And it's going to be 6 weeks or 3 months, whatever that it is in this current supply chain environment. They're not going to have a business for very long. They piggyback on the dealership. There is an issue. So we've heard there is availability of parts. I have a dealer with me today. He'll talk more specifically. He's a subject matter expert in what actually can be done, what can't be done. But we do know that availability of parts, diagnostics, tools, specialty tools, and documentation, that is all available. There's no question about it. But we do have an issue of uptime, and you've heard it a lot today. You heard it from the previous speaker. You heard it from Hovis. At those critical junctures of harvest and planting, those critical peak periods, we have a lack of capacity in our industry. And that means we have a lack of technicians. And that's something that everybody's feeling right now in this environment. We have just a lack of labor force. And that's not something that is malicious or intentional. In fact, every dealership on our survey said they would hire 5 additional technicians right now if they were available. I mean, right now, normally a dealership, the way they get a new technician is by poaching it from another dealership. Well, we're not adding to that. We need to increase the pipeline of those workers coming in, diesel technicians with 2-year certifications. And, oh, by the way, our dealerships invest, $100,000 on average to keep up the training and education yearly for their mechanics. Because it is complex with all the model and technology changes. And then what exacerbates that problem, and especially for the farmer in the field, and we talked about this, rural broadband, if you have a limited amount of technicians, the way we stretch their capacity is by having the ability to remotely diagnose things from the dealership. So they don't have to spend the drive time to go out to the farm and come back. We can only do that if we have the digital infrastructure available, rural broadband. That is woefully inadequate. This year is great talking about this because you guys have the opportunity with a lot of money coming down the pipe to maybe remedy some of that, and we can start seeing a big piece of this start to fall into place where we can use remote diagnostics more efficiently to diagnose equipment. So I would say, the other unintended consequence before I wrap up here is that, we're talking about, again, a complex issue. Intellectual property rights are at stake here. I talked about that last year. I do want to give you an update on, because Representative Hovis did mention the Massachusetts bill. They actually passed a ballot measure last year or 2 years ago previous. It's currently being litigated in federal court on some of the copyright issues and other federal preemption issues. But what you've seen, and this is an unintended consequence, is if you go buy a Subaru or a Kia right now in Massachusetts, it's basically a dead vehicle. They don't have any of the intellectual property. They don't have any navigation, the OnStar, any of the telematics available, because that's how they are meeting the requirements and complying with this new right to repair law in Massachusetts. Because you're taking a global manufacturer and saying, here's one state, and they want to expose your intellectual property, and these OEMs are saying, no, we're not going to do it. So if you go to buy a Subaru in Massachusetts right now, and you can Google this and quick 30-second search, you're going to find that car doesn't have any telematics available on it because they are concerned about their intellectual property and protecting that. And so we don't want to do something like that in Missouri, which I believe this legislation would do, is disincentivize people from providing that intellectual property in the software or warranty or other things that this bill complicates. With that, I'll turn it over unless there's any questions specifically for me.
Go right ahead, Representative Rogers.
What's wrong with somebody in Massachusetts not being able to buy a Subaru or a Kia?
What's that?
I said, what's wrong with people in Massachusetts driving a Ford or a Chevy?
Well, I drive a Ford pickup. I don't understand it either.
You had me for a while. Then I started hearing Subaru and, what did you say, Kia?
Kia. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Representative Young.
Chairman Roan, to inquire.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to ask you to maybe further explain. You said, and I'm going by your survey here, 50% of dealer parts are sold out the door.
Yeah.
What limitations do you have on who can buy these?
None.
No limitations at all?
No. That's why we have, independent repair shops. We have 2 of them in our top 10 parts customer on average, and we sell to 9 different ones on average. So that's available to anyone. And in fact, I don't want to speak for individual dealerships, but a lot of times they'll give a volume discount to the independent repair shops because they do so much business with them. So there are no limitations on what parts are available, who they sell it to. No matter what you hear, if you believe otherwise, come down to the dealership. We'll show you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative McQuarrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing you said that I agree with is I would prefer to see this done at the national level rather than state by state. But unfortunately, often movements of the people have to start at the grassroots in order to get attention. So that's why I'm glad we're having this hearing, because we're hearing from folks about the importance of this. So anyway, the question I have, based on what Representative Young was just talking about, is there's a difference between parts and then being able to reset sensors and things like that in order for things to operate. So I feel like you're only sharing part of the story on that.
So Representative McCreary, I guess your question is, am I sharing the whole story?
I don't feel like you are.
Yes, we are. And you can come down to the dealership, and we're happy to show you and walk you through the diagnostics and what exactly is available if you have questions. I have a subject matter expert here with the dealership, and they'll talk
I
about...
feel like I'm married to someone that understands this, and there's a difference between something physical being sold, a part,
Sure.
but then having all of the messaging and such being able to be reset. And I just, I'm hearing from what I would describe as real farmers about a disconnect there. There's a difference between buying an air filter or some kind of filter or physical piece of equipment, and ultimately being able to have all of the messaging cleared and everything being reset. And I think that's what I'm hearing is the problem. It's not about the parts, it's about the complete cycle. And until people can be at 100% being able to repair their own things, then that's where it feels like a monopoly to me. So I'm just being honest with you. When I'm hearing from real people, real Missourians, that's what I'm hearing is they can't complete it. Sure, they can buy a part, but they can't complete the repair.
So I think what you'll hear is 99% of all repairs. You can do 99% of all repairs.
Well, then
there's
that's
a
not
small-
100%, so then
there
it's
is
not
a-
right to repair. Then you don't actually own the equipment if you can only get to 99%.
Sure, you do own the equipment, but there's copyrighted material in there. I mean, you have to understand that, right? The
That's
software.
federal law. This doesn't touch federal law.
Sure, it does. It preempts it by saying you can have access to all security locks or security-related functions.
I'm not a lawyer. You are.
Yes,
So you seem to think that this is meddling with federal law.
absolutely. I think it would be preempted by federal law
Okay.
in
well,
many parts.
I'm not seeing that, so hopefully someone else can address that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Representative Dinkins.
To inquire.
Yes, ma'am.
You spoke a lot about the top line, and Representative also mentioned it. And I think there's a big difference between regular maintenance and repair work. And, what Representative Hova's bill is addressing is repair work. And this 56% also includes regular maintenance that people do, such as changing their tires or adding oil or air filters or things like that. So this 56% is really skewed as to what we're looking at in this bill. So do you have a more accurate number of what would be used for repairs?
Well, we don't make a distinction. It's a distinction without a difference between repairs and maintenance. But I guess what you're asking, Representative Dinkins, is
Well,
that
it's like this morning I
is-
took my vehicle and dropped it off at
Yes.
Toyota for their regular 55 miles, regular maintenance. And so regular maintenance is done regularly all the time. And so, obviously a large percentage of that is going to be for regular maintenance and not for necessarily repair work. So when you're saying that this number, 56%, shows that people are having the right to repair, it's really significantly less than the 56%.
No, it's not. I think what you're getting at is what percentage of repairs can people do? What are they allowed to do? And it's
Well, it's the dealer parts, 56% of the dealer parts, which the
Are
oil
sold
and the
out the
air filters
door.
and all of that is included in the 56%.
yeah, I think Craig here's with the dealership, and I think he can probably answer that directly to what you're getting at.
So, good morning, everybody, and so a maintenance part, are we talking about oil and filters pretty much? Is there anything else you would include in that?
I mean, I don't know what all, I don't
I think-
do the maintenance, but I mean, I know that all of these things, I've had several people in and out of the office and phone calls, and when I've asked them about this, they've all told me that regular maintenance things is included in these parts that are considered parts sold out the door. And so that looks like, 56%, like you mentioned in your opening statement, that people were able to do this, when really this is regular maintenance and not repair work.
Sure, I understand. For us, it's more like 67 or 68% of our parts that we sell go over the counter out the door, and of that 68%, probably about 20% of it would be maintenance parts. The rest would be repair parts.
So you're talking about 40% then, closer to as far what people were actually doing for repair. So then,
I would say for us, it'd be the majority of the parts that we sell would be for repair parts.
okay, thank you.
Excuse
And
me.
only 20% of the parts that we sell would be for maintenance parts.
Most people aren't doing regular maintenance, or
But
they're
we
bringing
do,
it
we
in.
do some maintenance for some customers that.
So
we
you
do
think
or
most people are
repairs
doing
for.
their maintenance, bringing their equipment in for maintenance?
No,
regular maintenance?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that of 100% of our parts that we sell, 2/3 of them go out over the counter, so people could make those repairs themselves. But if you go back to the 100%, 20% of that would be oil and filters. Okay, so
Tires and all that, oil
we sell
filter?
a lot of tires. I mean, that's mostly handled from an aftermarket standpoint. So 20% of everything we sell, and that's probably generous, would be oil and filters. And we do some of that maintenance work ourselves for customers who ask us to do that.
Excuse me, you need to introduce yourself to the committee.
Yes. I'm going to.
Hold up. If we're going to take this much time, I'm going to limit everybody to 5 minutes, because we've got to get everybody. And I'm sorry, but this room's going to be used at 10 o'clock, and I can't go over, and that's the reason I left. I hope everyone understands. So you can speak for 5 minutes, and then we'll go in. But Representative Sharp has got a question, and then go ahead and introduce yourself and make your statement.
Okay.
Go ahead, Representative Sharp.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dinquire. I'm the one with 640/20s, and I still use planner markers.
Thank you.
So I was going to be ready. I was going to be ready for Y2K, and still are. So, a couple things, and Representative McCreary stepped out, but I do think it's something that needs to be addressed at the federal level and will not be probably addressed until a state takes them. I'm not sure. At times I want Missouri to be the guinea pig doing it, but one piece of literature that came out this week was talking about safety issues, which I thought was a little bit disingenuous on speed. So how do you, like a 40/20, it'll only run 15 mile an hour, and if I run it at 25 mile an hour, I'm running 3,500 RPMs, which I wouldn't want to do that. So how do you make a newer machine run fast without the RPMs?
Track. Oh, I'll introduce myself. So my name is Craig Murray. I work for Heritage Tractor. We're a 21-store operation. We have 13 of those stores in Missouri. We employ about 300 parts and service folks. That includes about 100 technicians in Missouri, okay? To answer your question, so tractors in Europe go faster than tractors in the United States. They're both the same tractors are built in the United States. There's speed regulating software that are in the controllers, and so if access is given to the software as the bill would allow, then that speed regulating software could be disabled, and there's certainly, we could all imagine scenarios where I got farms that are 30 miles apart. I want to get there between them a little bit faster. So there is an example in there of that speed regulating software could be disabled, which would enable a tractor and an implement to travel faster than it was intended to travel in this market. And so that's where that comes from. I hope that makes sense.
The other comment I'd make, and the previous witness, got into a little bit of an emotional issue, with their father. I would think for the equipment manufacturers, you would want to open this up for access to a lot of people. For this reason, we just had a case with Sandy Hook, where an ammunition manufacturer got sued for a humongous amount of money. It was a very emotional issue. I don't agree with the verdict or why, that line of reasoning when you start if you make ammunition, that you're liable for what everybody did with it. By the same token, here, I think it's just a matter of time before someone goes after an equipment manufacturer where he says, well, I couldn't, and it may not be a personal thing, but basically you lose your peach crop because the planes couldn't fly, to spray or whatever, that it would give the equipment manufacturers some window to say, we're offering it to everybody. And maybe we are, because in my office, somebody talked about, we've agreed on, we're going to sell this, we just haven't agreed on the price, which goes to a lot of other different arguments. So, but what I'm getting at is that for Deere International or whoever, that it would cover their liability somewhat if it was much more accessible, where everyone could do it. By the same token, that day in the office talked about that there needs to be a sticker on a piece of machinery that this thing's out of warranty, that it's been modified, and maybe kind of like with Carfax or whatever, that this machine has a stigma, maybe good or bad, that it has been modified. I mean, I turned up my 620 combine 35 years ago because the dealer wouldn't do it, and of course we moved the cap, and turned it up power-wise. But just the liability that you're open to, I'm not agreeing with it, how someone could go at you for it, but by having that out there, or Heritage could say, you can go down to the repair shop down the road. So we've offered it to everybody, and our people aren't going to show up when we want them to. But I would just think for your purposes, being more flexible here on putting that out might. But the same token, the equipment manufacturers ought to come up with some way that when it goes to an auction, that it says, this piece of machinery that's 3 years old, someone's turned it up, somebody's done something to it to make it, and it would also put you all out of the liability part and give you some cover. So I'm just like a little response to that. So
I would say that we feel like it is available. Whatever you need to fix those 4020s is available to you.
Well, I knew that. That's like spears and swords, in the warfare deal. So
even what we sell today, 99% of the repairs that are going to be made on those machines can be made by the owners or by third parties.
But we're talking about the Curtis Gregory the newer stuff, you know, that somebody that when the satellite goes down, they can't plant. Now I still can, but anyway. but you know, but what I'm getting at is that and somebody's going to be pretty upset, you know, when you get where you can't plant or your combine won't run or whatever. So all I'm saying is that, like I say, I appreciate the representative bringing this forward, and I do think it needs to be addressed. It certainly needs to be addressed in Washington, D.C., not in Jefferson City. But until probably some state picks it up and runs with the ball, it's not going to happen.
Well, from my perspective, you know, Mr. Gregory's example, you know, probably it sounds like more recent equipment.
Right.
Your example is equipment that's it's older than me, and so you know it's right. It's actually the same year as me, so it's about 58 years old, 40/20. So,
okay.
And I'm telling you, everything in between, you know, I'm saying 99% of the repairs that we make can be made by owners of that equipment or by third parties.
But that argument, I would disagree with that part because we're talking about this new stuff. We're talking about this last window of since the computer chips or whatnot. That's the part we're talking about. We're not talking about 40/20s. We're not even talking about 30-year-old machinery or whatever. We're talking about the new planters, the new combines, the new sprayers.
I'm saying that 99% of Mr. Gregory's repairs on his equipment that's recent. Do we agree on that?
Right, but probably 100% of his crop gets harvested, and the First Witness, 100% of their crop is harvested by a machine that is liable to all this stuff. With new technology that will not run, and that's the part that they're complaining about. So it's saying it's 98% because 98% of the tractors are 40/20s and old stuff, but
that's not
90% of the farming's getting done by newer equipment. You go to
Representative, I get what you're getting at. It's not the percentage of the equipment; it's the percentage of
the
repairs.
acres.
So he's saying on brand new equipment that is sold right now today, you come buy a new combine or tractor, 99% of the repairs on that you can do yourself.
Right, and it's. But what I'm getting, I sell seed for Pioneer. 100% of the product, for the most part, is GMO stuff. Is genetics that's new that can, you're going to spray with. It's kind of like saying, well, you can spray it with Syncor, but you buy it because you want to spray it with Enlist. You want to spray it with something, new. So that's what I'm saying is making the argument that you can spray your seeds with anything you want, or you can work on your equipment with anything you want, but the acres and the bulk of this market is this certain point that we're trying to talk about here, the newer technology, the newer things, because that's my...
Excuse me. We've got to move on, folks. Let me tell you, we've only got 55 minutes to get this, and I'm going to be fair with the people that are for and against. And right now, the against have used up 20 minutes of the time, and the far before only used up 10. So do not get upset if you're here for or against and the time runs out, because I am going to be fair in this hearing. So right now, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to close, and then we're going to move on.
3 minutes to close. My family's been a Pioneer seed corn dealer for 60 years. And I stand by the comment. And when you look at our repairs, 99% of them can be made by my brothers and my nephews, and with the stuff that's available today. Again, 2 out of 3 parts that we sell go over the counter. We have 50,000 parts customers. Our top 4 customers are independent repair shops. So we do not restrict what parts we sell and to whom. I want to talk about how we support right to repair in other ways. So tech manuals. Tech manuals are what John Deere makes or uses to create and deliver technical training to technicians. Tech manuals they're like the Bible for any piece of machinery. And every piece of machinery that John Deere sells has to have a tech manual. And all those tech manuals are available from us. Every tech manual that we can buy from John Deere, a customer can buy from John Deere. An independent repair shop can buy from John Deere. So the combination of getting any part that you want and the Bible that tells you how to diagnose and repair that machine is available today. What you can't do from the 1% that we're talking about, and it's less than 1%, are those payloads, or the downloads of software that when we have to replace software for whatever reason. And so, but those downloads can be done remotely, which means we can do them over the internet. We don't have to go on site. They can be done cheaper. They can be done without waiting when we have that. But the one thing we've got to have is a good internet connection in order to do that. So that's a growing part of our business, and being able to make those kinds of repairs remotely is a big deal. Rural internet is a big part of that. Somebody mentioned technician recruiting. We have 15 openings right now today for technicians in Missouri. These are good paying jobs, $50,000 to $60,000 to start. Some of our guys are making over $100,000 a year. So these are good jobs. As you know, I'm from the school of if you oppose, you must propose, and that's what I'm proposing. Let's partner on that. Let's partner on technician recruiting. If I just a couple comments to wrap up. I would say that this issue of selling parts at cost, there is an unintended consequence with that. We would invest less. We've grown our parts inventory over 50% in the last 2 years. That's millions of dollars that we have grown our parts inventory. And the market demands that we do that. We don't survive if we can't provide good service to our customers, good service to our technicians, good service over our parts counters. So if we're forced to sell parts at cost or some diminished margin, that's going to reduce our investment in people. It's going to reduce our investment in inventory. Same way with third parties being able to do warranty repairs. If that happens, that is going to have an unintended consequence of, okay, now all of a sudden we don't need as many technicians. So and not just us, but so the industry will require fewer technicians because people are doing their own warranty repairs. That is going to reduce our capacity from a technician standpoint, and ultimately that's going to increase customer costs. So we do invite you to come to any one of our facilities, and we're happy to spend more time one-on-one with you to show you how we support customers' right to repair. I think a yes vote on HB 2402 is a vote to kill jobs in Missouri. That's what I believe. I believe that the legislation is not needed. I think it's a solution looking for a problem. I thank you for the time to speak, and I thank you for your commitment to Missouri Public Service.
Thank you. Now, someone here in support of. Come right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Willie Cade. Thank you, committee. Thank you for having this hearing. I'm the proud grandson of Theophilus Brown, a highly regarded John Deere engineer from the first half of the 20th century. During his career, he served on the board for 30 years. And for much of his time, he led the research and development efforts at John Deere. He amassed 158 patents, and during his tenure, his competitors gave him the name Theophilus Theo Brown. Some say his real skill was the ability to read a patent that had been granted and understand or have the vision to know what the next patent was going to be. The common practice of widely sharing unique and valuable ideas and protecting them for a period of time is the cornerstone of our very successful and highly competitive markets. This time-tested practice allows for the transfer of ownership of an individual product to a customer without the risk of competitors copying their creations. Neither patent law nor copyright law were designed to give manufacturers control of an individual product after the sale. Today's electronically controlled products are necessarily tethered via telematics to the original equipment manufacturers. But the fact should not allow them to take ownership rights away from farmers and ranchers. Owners should be free to choose the services that their highly valued dealers can provide, but not required to do it. If you enact this law, equipment owners will be able to choose if they, another dealer, maybe with different paint color, an independent service provider, or the OEM dealer can repair their equipment per their choice. I think it's important to note here that dealers under today's systems may be required to get permission from the manufacturer itself to complete a repair. That references to the payload files. This deliberately engineered level of control is a transfer of ownership. It's anti-competitive, it's expensive, and it's hazardous. The passage of this legislation is urgent, especially in today's environment, because industry books are, quote, largely full through the balance of the year. That came from the John Deere announcement on their quarterly earnings. In other words, they're not taking new orders. Parts, especially electronic components, are in short supply, as referenced by the opponents to this bill. There are significant pressures on both physical and cyber warfare areas today that we've gotten. Used equipment is almost non-existent and certainly more expensive than it's ever been. There's actually equipment that's selling for a larger price today than it was brand new. And most importantly, we're heading into a planting season now. I believe that it's important for Missouri to pass this responsible legislation because this committee, this body, this state understands agriculture. I've seen dozens of these hearings. I've never seen such a well-informed committee as this particular committee on this issue. I am incredibly proud to be here today to talk about it. Right to repair may not be for everyone. It may not be for Representative Gregory. It may be great for him to do the way he does. But it is significant for many, especially in a country born of the will to be free. Now, I'd like to answer some questions, or I can jump into some things I disagreed with what the opposition said. Your call, ladies and gentlemen.
Why don't you just go ahead? And
yes, sir. Thank you. I will.
Then we'll have questions, and we might interrupt you.
Please.
So we won't wait till the end. We might just go ahead and interrupt you right then and have a question right then so we won't forget it.
Yes, okay? Sir. Please do anytime. One of the things about if this legislation passes during peak times, that crunch of technicians would be eased because either the individual farmer could do it themselves, an independent service, or someone who is familiar with it, like an auto industry or truck industry person, could provide that kind of technology assistance. And quite frankly, I think that's in the best interest of the dealers because they wouldn't have to hire the people full time. They could have a part-time workforce on that also. The commitment they said that they made to make the software available, they did not do it. They said January 1st, 2021, January 1st, 2021 came and went, and it was not provided. That is not true. The software that is available is not dealer-level Service Advisor. It is some reduced capability software, and it does not allow any of the 50 or so electronic control units to be reprogrammed. That is what Representative McCreary talked about when she talked about organizer or integrating those parts into it. A moisture meter needs a payload file. A moisture meter is not part of the emissions control. It cannot, while you can buy that part from the dealer, you cannot have a fully completed repair without the payload file. And by the way, that cannot come from the dealer. It has to come from the manufacturer. This legislation was passed in 2013 in the European Union. This exists because of legislation in the European Union, and there hasn't been the major catastrophe of either the dealers falling apart or safety or any of the other issues. If you look at the language in detail in the European language, you will see, and by the way, I have it with me if you want to see it, because I know I'm in Missouri. That was a joke, yeah, it was. Thank you, thank you. We can actually see that it's happened. And I think probably the most important thing I want this body to come away with is the study over the last decade by McKinsey talking about the reduced profitability of agricultural producers because of technology. It's Exhibit 2 on page 5, and I will happily share that with anybody that wants on this. Anything else? And I'm trying to go as fast as I can, Chairman. Yes, sir, please.
I've written down a few comments.
Yes, sir.
Okay. As you know, I do farm.
Yes, sir. And I hear it's a beautiful farm.
And what you said about used equipment.
Yes, sir.
In where we farm, used equipment is valuable for two reasons. Number one, federal regulations.
Uh-huh.
They've required certain things to be on equipment that literally brought that equipment to an extremely cost. Give you an example, a power unit, and I'm going to be very quick. A power unit that used to cost $9,500 when Obama came along and that you had to put DEF in it to keep the emissions down, it's now $22,000. Used tractor trailer rigs that used to cost $5,000 and $6,000 today because they don't have the DEF system on it. They're costing $15,000 to $20,000. So I disagree with the technology. The technology, in my opinion, has saved our farm because we can't find farm labor. We're farming right now the same acreage my daddy farmed, and he used 40 H's and M's. Today we have 6 and one big tractor. So the technology, we don't have the labor. So technology has allowed us to do that. Bigger tractors, better tractors, and so forth. And I just had to disagree with you on that. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions. Oh, surely y'all got some questions. Surely you do. Well, then I'll ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
And I've asked John Deere this. I've asked Case International this. And it's obvious I'm against this bill, and the sponsor knows that I'm against this bill. It's mainly because of safety and of using a farmer and to raise the horsepower of the tractor, and then when he gets ready to resell that tractor, run the horsepower back down to what it's supposed to be, what it's supposed to be classified as, and then I buy that used tractor, and
yes,
then
sir.
That tractor has been used as 220 horses, but I buy it as a 160 horsepower tractor, and then I put it out on the farm, and all of a sudden, I've got a motor problem.
Yes, sir.
And why do I have a motor problem out of a tractor that's so old, only supposed to have been running 160 horsepower, when all of the season it's been running as 220? And here's my question. and my question to John Deere and Case. Is there a technical way that you can put into that tractor that would say this tractor has been adjusted? And so when I'm a used tractor, can I go in and have my farm hand plug that in and it shows up, yes, this has been adjusted, this has been adjusted, and this has been adjusted? Is there a technical way to do that?
Chairman, first of all, I hope I can dissuade you from your anticipated vote, so you'll vote yes. Number one. Number two is absolutely, and as a matter of fact, that data is collected daily and transmitted every day, 24/7, 365, up to the manufacturers. So you can have the data, not even dependent, not even having the ability for it to be changed on the machine, it already exists. So the answer to your question is absolutely. And if you remember the history of Carfax, which was born here in Columbia, Missouri, we can create a super Carfax, if you will, for all that agricultural equipment. So the notion that this process of changing the equipment isn't known by manufacturers was actually referred to by Representative Gregory when he talked about getting the phone calls about his sensor on the tire, whatever thing. So the dealers know this, they have it, that they think that this is an issue. As I object to that as a argument. And I also want to bring up the other argument about fair and reasonable. Yes, we need to change that language, and we are excited to talk to the dealers and to the manufacturers about that issue to get good language. And sir, I'd like to ask a promise of you, if I may. If we can get those two issues handled, will you change your vote?
I don't think so.
Oh, darn, okay. I tried, right?
Hey, you ask anybody in this building, I'm going to be honest with you. Everybody.
Sir, that is true. I've always heard that about you, and I got to admit, I really appreciate it. So I thank you. And I also want to be cognizant that there are other people that want to talk, but please, yeah.
Represent.
Yes, permission to inquire.
Go right ahead.
Carfax is an independent group. It's not anything to do with dealers, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would Carfax exist if the right to repair wasn't done in the automobile industry?
Yes.
It would. Okay.
Yes, but right now, given the contractual relationships and requirements by the manufacturers when you purchase equipment, you don't have access to that data. Okay? As a third party, so what we would like to have happen is people like the Missouri Farm Bureau, we'd like to have them have access to that data so that they can be that independent, reliable source that can create that kind of super record of maintenance.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions of this witness? Seeing none, thank you, sir, for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your good humor.
Now then, we'll go to someone in opposition to.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Bradley Shadd. I'm the CEO of Missouri Corn Growers Association. We represent about 2,000 corn farmers across the state of Missouri. We appreciate Representative Hova's interest in providing farmers with additional resources and opportunities to maximize productivity. In fact, that's what we're, as an organization, is here to do. However, we are concerned that this House Bill 2402 may result in unintended adverse consequences. For that reason, our board, after long deliberation, has decided that we must oppose this legislation as currently written. I want to be clear and upfront, Missouri Corn Growers Association supports farmers having the right to repair their own equipment. That being said, we feel there's a fundamental difference between the right to repair and the right to modify. We fear the provisions between the right to repair and right to modify contained in 2402 go well beyond the right to repair and would statutorily codify the right to modify. Right to repair is something right to repair is something every farmer across the nation has today. Equipment manufacturers are more than willing to provide the tools and documents necessary to repair one's own equipment. Should a farmer or independent repair shop need the diagnostic equipment, sometimes required to identify a problem, manufacturers are willing and able to provide the software diagnostic tools used by the dealer technicians. Right to modify entails changing the computer codes of a machine. The problem is if somebody were to go in and change the code, they could run the risk of disabling key safety features. In addition, these modifications may cause significant reliability and durability issues for the current and future owners of said equipment. Furthermore, they risk penalties of almost $45,000 per piece of equipment that are found to be non-compliant with the Federal Clean Air Act. There are many different outstanding questions and concerns for this. For instance, what impact will this legislation have upon repair costs for growers? What will stop warranties being increased in length to maintain revenues? Does the language pertain only to equipment and software, or is it requiring manufacturers to provide tools and software along the right to access and change code? Will allowing manufacturers to create tiered code structure change the current level of access to proprietary material with the potential fines that could occur from violating federal regulations? Will this just drive up the cost to farmers and manufacturers prepare for this potential future fines? Will independent repair shops be capable of providing benefits to farmers that are sufficient to offset other concerns? Will the cost to access technology be cost prohibitive for independent repair shops? What about possible unintended safety consequences? I know I've got a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. I don't want a piece of equipment turning the PTO shaft on. We've talked a lot about cars and vehicles and them having the right to repair on that. We're not talking about the same thing. A vehicle is not the same as the heavy equipment operators, and even the technicians. I don't want a car technician working on my heavy piece of equipment. They don't understand the consequences that can happen, and so bringing those on to me is not the right thing. I think the servicing dealers need the additional resources, the additional staffing. So with that being said, on top of all of that, what happens if modifications are not disclosed when the equipment is subsequently sold or traded? In the right to modify, they can go in and delete that data that you were talking about, Mr. Chairman. If they have the right to do that within this bill, they could go in and delete that data and you wouldn't know. Also, what legal recourse is available when code changes and goes wrong, and who will ultimately bear the cost of litigation or, more important, death of an inadvertent PTO shaft being turned on? As you can see, there are many outstanding questions and concerns that for that reason we feel is best to pump the brakes, no pun intended, until we find the true impact of this legislation will have on Missouri's farmers. Considering the significant difference between right to repair and the right to modify, the safety, legal, and financial concerns associated with such a proposal, Missouri Corn Growers Association would like to go on record in opposition to House Bill 2402 as currently written. Again, we sincerely appreciate Representative Hovis, his desire. We know it's true and factual. He wants to help farmers just as we do. But for the future of farmers, we simply fear that this bill will result in adverse and unintended consequences. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Senator Burns, go right ahead.
Yes, okay. You said that they could delete the data, but isn't that data transmitted to the manufacturer? They couldn't delete it from the manufacturer.
Correct, but per Chairman Roan's question, whenever that person goes in to plug in that card, that's deleted from the tractor. Yes, the dealership would have that, but the specific person who's going in and pulling that data would not be able to.
Okay, but the data wouldn't be gone. It would just not be in the tractor anymore.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of this witness? Thank you, sir. Please make sure you fill out a witness form. You bet. Now then, we will be someone in support of.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Emily Leroy on behalf of Missouri Farm Bureau, here in support of this legislation. Missouri Farm Bureau members several years ago adopted policy supporting farmers and independent repair shops having access to manuals and diagnostic tools to repair farm equipment. We know that farmers are more dependent on technology than ever before, and when equipment breaks down, they need access to quick and affordable repair options. We recognize that farmers' relationships with dealers is critical, and some have great relationships and access to quick repairs, and others, as we have heard today, do not. We want to find a solution that strikes a balance that gives farmers and independent repair shops the ability to make repairs, but doesn't cross that line to cause safety or emission concerns like we've heard about today, or diminish manufacturers' ability to complete research and development or diminish dealer inventories of parts. This is a broader issue, as we've heard. This legislation is actually written fairly narrow compared to other legislation in other states that deals with other consumer electronics. Our national affiliate, American Farm Bureau Federation, actually has policy supporting right to repair legislation or a negotiated written agreement between producers and manufacturers, similar to what has already been accomplished in the auto industry, which we've heard alluded to several times here today. The bottom line is we're looking for a solution to guarantee farmers and independent repair technicians access to the information, parts, and tools that are available to dealerships. I think it's been clear that everybody prefers a national solution, but absent that, we are supportive of legislation, and we appreciate Representative Hovis for leading this conversation in Missouri, and Missouri can be a leader on this issue. Happy to try to address any questions.
Any questions of this witness? Representative Berger.
Just to comment and maybe ask a question. The comments from the dealer say everything is available. The comments from everybody else said everything is not available. So how do we ever get to know what is available and what is not available? And, you know, one thing, when I worked for a farm equipment dealership, that was the 86 series tractors for International and 30 series tractors for John Deere. The first thing people would do was turn up the horsepower, but you could tell when they turned up the horsepower because the seal would be broken on the diesel pump. So that wire was clipped, that cable was clipped. And the biggest problem we had with used equipment coming back in was it had been turned up, so the bull gear or the final drives would fail. We would guarantee tractors for 100 hours at 50% cost and labor, and we had several broken axles or bull gears failure. So I think right to repair kind of leads to the right to modify at some point in time. It may not be the intended consequences, but I can see people needing a 220 horsepower tractor and buying a 160 horsepower tractor because of the cost and turning it up to make sure they have what they need, and then use it for 4 or 5 years and put on $1,800 and trade it back in, and then that equipment fails. That's just kind of a comment.
To quickly address that, so it's clear this is a really nuanced and technical conversation, and there may be things that need to be addressed technically within the legislation. However, I think it's fair to say that this is not a case of a few disgruntled farmers who are bringing this forward. This is a national conversation. We have national affiliates of consumers all across the board who are having this. So the he said, she said situation that you've acknowledged is true, but from our membership, we would like to see improvements, and that is not just for Missouri. That is a national conversation that is happening.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Roan and members of the Agriculture Policy Committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with all of you today. I am speaking in opposition of House Bill 2402. So first off, who am I? My name is Luann Hausner. I'm a manager for customer support that covers the U.S. and Canada for the Agricultural and Turf Division of John Deere. You know, at John Deere, we take a lot of pride, not only in our customers, but also in our dealers, and you've heard from a few of them today. John Deere does not succeed unless our farmers and contractors succeed. And we are thankful that we are working with some outstanding dealer locations across the state of Missouri. You know, due to narrow windows for vital agricultural work, our goal is to have farmers' equipment up and running every time that they need to be operating. Equipment being ready when a customer needs it is critical, whether they're raising a crop or tending to livestock. The bottom line, as we've established here today, is that John Deere does make all the necessary repair materials and tools available to the market today. Customers have access to parts. Customers have access to the manuals, whether that's the operational manual, the technical manual that we talked about that our dealers utilize, electronic technical manuals that customers can download. Customers have access to those. In addition, customers have access to those diagnostic codes, the very same codes that the technicians use to diagnose that equipment. Customers have access to those codes not only when they're in the cab of the equipment, but also they can have that remotely, because we know farmers need to be in many places doing many things, and they have the capability to have those codes even at their home remotely transferred to them. Customers also have the access to manage not only the machine but the diagnostic codes through mobile apps to be able to do more better management. So there's a great deal of access to the customers on how to diagnose the equipment. Now, there was mention earlier about when did John Deere start providing some of these electronic diagnostic tools that they have now. And we've had these tools actually available since 2017. Prior to when we had an industry commitment that we had to, John Deere had these tools available. And as we've talked about here today, I want to reaffirm that John Deere supports customers' right to repair. What we do not support is the right to modify. Now, there are 5 key reasons why we oppose this modification or unauthorized software updates, and I'd like to walk through those quickly. First is regulatory compliance that was mentioned earlier, really relating to the federal emission requirements established by the Clean Air Act. Second is safety of operation. The third, reliability and durability of that equipment to run as it was designed. The fourth, security of our customers' operational data when it is exposed over the internet or over cell phone in terms of opening up that. And lastly, equipment value and safety for future owners. Leaving that, in making that modification, we're leaving future equipment owners vulnerable for not only machine failure, but also safety incidents and uncertainty in used markets when that machine is operating not as it was designed to do. And we talked earlier, the reality is that less than 2% of repairs require software updates. Now, due to the 5 reasons that I listed out, the impact and the impact that this legislation would have on our John Deere dealers, again, I want to reaffirm that John Deere opposes the passage of this legislation. In summary, we don't need legislation for this issue. The industry commitment is already in place to provide the parts and tools necessary, and every John Deere dealer can offer those tools to customers for both repair, diagnostics, and maintenance. So thank you very much for your time this morning, and I'm now available for questions.
Any questions of this witness? Representative McQuarrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to inquire. So is the data available at John Deere if somebody repairs their machine?
So if someone repairs the machine, if someone does a physical repair on a machine, or you mean if someone...
Like, it's not secretive if something is done to a machine?
No, it's as a customer, well, what a customer does once they take that part home, they put it on their machine. If it threw a code that or something, then the dealer would have that and would have that information for it.
Okay, so the data is available. It's not like somebody could do something and like try to sell a machine later and act like they've never worked on it.
So let me clarify. So I think what you're talking about repair, you're talking about modification, software modification?
No, I'm talking about, well, first of all, I think that the word modification is being used in an interesting way, let's just say.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm interested in if John Deere has access to data when someone repairs their machine.
So if software is, what I would tell you right now is that if there was something that happened on that machine that caused it to throw a code, then yes, there would be a recording of it. But we do not have the system set up so that there is that type of, we don't currently have that technology to be able to tell if there was a modification made, an unauthorized modification.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Weaver?
Thank you so much for coming up here and testifying today.
Absolutely.
So just a quick question. So first off, without the modification, because I feel like agree with Tracy McCreary, this is getting thrown around in a very, very interesting way. But I was just curious, has John Deere worked with the bill sponsor at all on any of the issues that you have with, you're saying that this bill is not necessary, but it seems, hearing from today's testimony and hearing written testimonies too, that it is necessary and that they can't do 100% of the repairs that they need to, or this gives them another option to go to a different repair shop that might be closer, or they might have a better relationship with. So have you worked with the bill sponsor on any of the language on maybe, compromising, adjusting, whatever? Has there been talks or?
Sorry, I wanted to let you finish.
No. I mean, has there been discussions or not?
So I personally have not been involved into the discussions that I can speak to from my own experience. So I apologize that I cannot speak to from my experience in my role within customer support specifically. I do feel that, I know as we talked about, we've really reaffirmed that there is availability, and I do feel that there is a lack of awareness out there to that point. Earlier, as we were talking about people having discussions, farmers having the discussions with their dealers and not realizing tools like Customer Service Advisor, some of those digital tools that they did have access to. So I do feel that, there is an opportunity for awareness, that we have a commitment from the industry to make these tools available, and that they are available today. So that's one of the reasons why I think we are talking about it, because people aren't aware that those tools are available.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Gregory, go ahead.
To inquire. So I want to clear up a couple things. So I do actually have some older equipment. I fixed a DraftLink sensor on my 8200 that there was no codes. I just went with logic that I thought that was the issue, and I was actually extremely proud of myself for completing that repair this weekend. I don't have auto steer. My auto steer is my right hand, fueled by Monster Energy and coffee. That's my auto steer and row markers. But what I want to touch on, what is, we talk about the software that can be provided. What is that? That it's the same that the dealership uses. What's the name of that program? I think I know what it is, but.
So our dealers use an application called Service Advisor in order to do the software reprogramming.
What is the difference between the Service Advisor that I can purchase and use myself versus what the dealerships offer?
Excellent question. So the difference, the majority of that is the same. The only difference is the software reprogramming, the ability to reprogram software in some limited calibrations. Otherwise, all of the diagnostic information, all of the materials, all of these, and some limited calibrations are available through the Customer Service Advisor that customers can purchase.
Is Deere working towards making some of those payload files being able to be pushed by a regular person, so to speak?
I think we still feel very strongly that the training that our dealers invest in, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that our dealers invest in training the technicians, is vital to ensuring that we can further guarantee the safety of that equipment. And so I would say that we still feel that for the safety of customers, for the safety of not just farmers, but of everybody that comes in contact with that equipment, we feel that those software updates need to be done through an authorized equipment dealer.
Okay, so on my 8320, when I get the code that says high pressure fuel pump not able to meet required pressure, if I have my own software using Service Advisor and my dealership has the same software using Service Advisor, I'm going to get the same protocol for what repair scenarios I need to go through to finish the problem.
What you're going to see when you see that code is you're going to see here's what's happening and here's what needs to be done to resolve it. Yes, you're going to see that. You're going to see similar information that either a software update is required, or it's going to walk you through what the diagnostics are that is required. Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Young?
Thank you. To inquire. Good
let's-
morning.
Good morning.
Yes, it is still morning.
Excuse
Look at
me,
the clock.
Representative. Let's get to real quick. Boom, boom, boom.
So
Or we're not gonna be
we've
able to
heard a lot
finish.
about right to repair, but not modify.
Correct.
Can you just clarify exactly what modify means to John Deere? Because I see modification closely related to innovation. And in a competitive market, innovation can benefit everybody. So what is modification, just to be clear?
No, good question. So we define modification as making unauthorized software updates. So really focusing it in on those software updates.
And what would that look like if a person did some sort of unauthorized modification to this? What? Just give me an example. I'm kind of visual. And
Sure, absolutely. You know, there's a lot of safety protocols that we have within our equipment. We build in quite a bit of technology in order to make it run efficiently. You know, one of the things that we can do is we can utilize GPS to actually steer the equipment. So it helps to not only reduce overlap, reducing the input costs for that farmer, but it also helps, you know, with inexperienced labor, that they can have somebody that actually, that tractor will be steering by wire and using GPS. So if there was a modification that happened, there's a lot of different safety protocol that are in place to prevent that equipment from going off course, from going off of its GPS course, from turning around at the end of the row that it knows where that end of the row is. So potentially that equipment could continue going forward and could go into a busy road. The equipment would not operate as it is designed, and it would break those safety protocol. So.
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman, and the committee for holding this hearing today. My name is Bridget Sanderson, and I am with Environment Missouri and the Missouri Public Interest Research Group. I'm going to keep this really short and sweet because I'm the odd duck here. But I wanted to start off by saying that chalking this up to just one farmer's lived experience is really dismissive of his lived experience. For instance, you know, the first farmer that testified in support owns thousands of acres of land that provides food for Missouri families and puts it on the table. I want to talk a little bit. He also discussed consolidation within dealerships. And so I just wanted to state that we released a report last week called Deer in the Headlights, and we looked at how this mass consolidation has basically started affecting farmers and making it more difficult for them to fix their equipment. So in Missouri alone, there is one John Deere dealership chain for every 13,571 farms and every 3,929 acres of farmland. And this is just one example of consolidation. This has been happening with all farm equipment colors across the board. So think of the small business potential that we have and we're missing out on here. We can provide the same tools and parts and diagnostics, everything, to farmers and independent repair shops to make repair easier and make a competitive market. I do want to state a couple things about the right to modify argument. We are not asking for the right to modify. That's not what this bill is asking for. It is right to repair. Modification is still illegal at the federal level, and it will be even after this bill is passed. With regards to safety, you know, I have a little bit more faith with the educated and fully capable farming community in our state, as well as independent repair shops as well. So I'm just going to keep it really short with those two talking points. So I'll take any questions.
Any questions of this witness? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Then we'll go to, we've got 10 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll make sure I don't repeat any previous testimony. I'm Ray McCarty, President of Associated Industries in Missouri. We want to be on record in opposition to this legislation again this year for the same reasons that we were before. I'm going to concentrate on a couple of key points that I don't think have been covered very well yet, and that is that requiring a manufacturer to disclose their source software code is really constitutes a taking. And does the government really want to get into that business of requiring disclosure of intellectual property? There is a part of the bill that says that you don't have to disclose trade secrets, but when you look, there's an exception, and the trade secrets include software and modifications to software. So all of your software, your parts, tools, all of that has to be made available at a cost that someone determines is fair and reasonable. The government should not be in the business of price fixing. It should not be in the business of price fixing parts or taking intellectual property and requiring it to be disclosed. There are also some side effects of requiring software disclosure like this. We live in a world today where cybersecurity is a big thing. You know, we have to worry about, even the Department of Defense has trouble protecting themselves, or state and federal governments have problems protecting themselves. How much more difficult will it be for a farmer who may not understand, or worse yet, this also applies to construction equipment. If you have some of these construction equipment pieces that are in downtown St. Louis, for example, and someone hacks that system and is able to control maybe a wrecking ball, what kind of damage could be done there? So that, in addition to the safety concerns, also is another reason for you to be against this bill. You've heard that there is a harm to consumers if that software is altered and then reset to make it look like it never happened, Mr. Chairman. To your point, the future purchasers of that equipment would not know that that modification had been made if the ability to go in and reset that software is given to anyone who requests it, and we're happy to answer questions.
Any questions of this witness? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? And how about someone for information purposes only?
Sorry, I am not for informational purposes. I'm in opposition, but just want to make sure I go on the record. Kara Cortes on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry in opposition. Previously stated, we are really opposed, predicated on our belief that intellectual property should be protected. These manufacturers are putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in manufacturing this really sophisticated technology, and we think their investments should be protected. We are now known as a flourishing state for technology and innovation, especially in our ag tech sector, and we think that this bill actually has a chilling effect on the potential for other companies to make significant investments in innovation. For these reasons, we're in opposition and can take any questions you may have.
Any questions of this witness? Seeing none, thank you, ma'am. Anyone else here in opposition or support of or for information purposes only? Okay, that will conclude the hearing on Ag Policy Committee. Thank you for everyone. Well, that's not bad.
Well, you
Hey.
ended up with 5 minutes. 5 minutes left.
That's not bad.